Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Woodstock, Georgia. This is Fearless Formula with Sharon Klein.
Welcome to Fearless Formula on Business RadioX, where we talk about the ups and downs of the business world and offer words of wisdom for business success. I'm your host, Sharon Klein, and I have a very special guest in the studio today. I'm very excited to speak to this gentleman. He is a film producer, a podcaster, an adventurer, a broadcast media professional. He is the CEO and founder of Rugged Compass. He is also the host and creator of The Edge of Adventure, which is an award-winning documentary and video series. He also has an award-winning podcast. Did I already mention that? Let's just get started. Welcome to the studio, Adam Asher.
Well, thank you very much, Sharon. It's an honor to be here, and I just appreciate the opportunity to come and talk and to get to know you a little bit, and also congratulations on all the things that you have done. I know you're quite the accomplished VO artist, among other things. So it's an honor, my honor, to be here today.
Well, my goodness, we can end right there. Thanks,
you. Thanks, everybody.
That's the only reason I wanted you in the studio today. Thank you so much for saying that. That's so sweet. I didn't even know you knew all that about me. But I had to research about you, obviously, but thank you for saying that.
Well, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And so I was just saying before the show got started that there's not that much about you before you really became more of a public figure. Because I was trying to find out like where you grew up and the backstory that leads to where you are now. The only thing I found, there were two things that I found, is one, that your first job was in radio. And then two, when you were 15, you got exposed to sort of the humanitarian side. And that's what's really inspired you to be where you are today. So will you give me a little bit of a backstory of you? Thank you.
Well, first of all, my first job was in radio. And I think you could also say that my last job was in radio too, before I went into business for myself. And radio, I love radio. I have for obviously my entire career, but I've loved radio even since I was a kid, because I just enjoyed the fact that you would be listening to a conversation. You would be, even as the listener, you're a part of the conversation. It brings you there. And in the old days, radio was all there was. And then this podcasting thing came along. And podcasting has that same magic. It's a conversation that you become a part of. You get to know the people that you're listening to, and you feel like you have a seat at the table. Like all the listeners are right here, seated with us. And to me, that's what makes podcasting so cool. And it's what got me interested in radio. As a kid. I mean, I was interested in radio from pretty early age, probably 13, 14, was interested, and then began working the day I could do so legally on my birthday when I turned 16.
Where did you go? Did you show up at a radio station and say, please give me a job here?
So I think, you know how God kind of opens doors along the way. Prior to turning 16, I had the opportunity to go visit a studio, like a local radio studio, and it was a radio station. And so I made a few contacts, knew some of the people there, and then the day I turned 16, I literally went up there, filled out the application, and I think I may have filled out the application in advance, because I do recall I was on the air running the board behind the microphone the day I turned 16.
You're so young to do that.
So, you know, old folks like me, we grew up in a very different time. We grew up quickly, and I don't think that people grow up as quickly now, and that maybe there's some advantages to that too.
There's a different level of growing up that we're even talking about, because I was very independent. When I turned 18, I left and never moved back home, and I've heard statistically that does not happen now. So but they also get exposed now to more adult concept things through social media and the internet and all that. But there was something kind of earnest about making your own way. You leave when you're 18 and you do what you can to make your life. There's something it is definitely a different generation now, but when you're 16 and you're running like a whole board and a show and everything, it feels daunting.
Well, I was born at a very early age.
Stop.
But I grew up quickly, and as I think, you know, here we are in Business RadioX. I mean, I know your program is affiliated with Business RadioX, and Gen X. You know, we grew up we were in a hurry to grow up. I mean, I think many of us started working younger, got married younger, sort of was on this trajectory to grow up as quickly as we could. And that might be part of why our kids, the next generation, didn't do that, because in a way we saw, there are advantages to it for sure, but we saw the disadvantage to being in a hurry to grow up, and then we influenced our own kids to say, hey, you don't have to drive right when you're 16. You could wait. You don't have to, have a career the minute that you leave college, or
even know what you want to do.
Or know, yeah. So we gave them a lot more slack, and maybe they took advantage of that in some cases. But it's just kind of, I think, how the generations swing back and forth. Or it's like a pendulum a little bit, and
for sure,
and advantages to both.
I think that everything is a bit of a pendulum. Like, it'll just swing back the other way at some point, and it'll be more like, get out of the house and go get your job.
It is culture's an interesting thing, and it's not the same everywhere, and it's not the same now here in Woodstock in the Atlanta area. It's not the same as it was 20 years ago, or as it will be in 20 years. It does change, but yeah, I think Gen X, we were in a hurry to grow up, and so we did.
So where was this town and radio station that you started in?
So I grew up, most of my childhood was in a small town by the name of Manchester, Georgia. So that's north of Columbus, Georgia, probably southwest of LaGrange.
Gotcha.
And still a good, it was a drive to get to Atlanta. And I remember, again, back to being 16 and driving, I remember driving and coming into Atlanta when you would see the buildings in downtown Atlanta. I remember just sort of that shot of adrenaline, thinking, oh my gosh, I'm in the big city. This is the big city now. And now I think we all see those same buildings, and it's adrenaline, but it's for a completely different reason. We're just ready to get out of traffic.
Well, it's funny because it was almost like foreshadowing what you were destined to do, looking at those buildings and getting a shot of adrenaline and being inspired.
Well, yeah, I think, honestly, I think all of us, we are who we are from the beginning. And of course we grow and change, and hopefully as we grow and mature in life, we become a better version of ourselves. But even as a kid, I was interested in radio, and I was interested in travel. I was interested in culture and languages and this sort of thing. And I still am, right? Mm-hmm. I think back, I don't know that I've changed a whole lot. Of course, we've all changed and hopefully have grown. But that desire to see the world, in my case, and to travel and to learn from and be a part of different cultures, that was something I wanted to do, dreamt of doing long ago.
Do you think that that's what we all kind of do, or a certain type of person will, as they grow, it's almost like the phoenix, they kind of chip away at the different parts of themselves that aren't as aligned with their spirit as they want. So as they grow and go through experiences, they become more congruent for who they are?
Hopefully. I think if we're living a successful life, if we are improving, I 100% agree that's what's happening. I know some people do get stuck, and usually when you get stuck, it's because I forget the word you just used, but it's you need to let life, and if you're a person of faith, let God sort of chip away at the parts that need to go. And if you resist that, or you're afraid to do that, or doing that makes you feel bad somehow, then you tend to get stuck because you're the one holding on to it. You're kind of refusing to grow.
I know a lot of people like that, but it's not something you can make someone do. It has to be sort of, you either want to embrace it or not. The challenge is real. And I was actually going to ask you some of those universal questions, like, as you've traveled, but we'll get there. Okay. Next step, after you have been in radio, you got exposed to humanitarianism as a teenager, and that led you to, what was the next step?
So I think in my case, it did all start with radio, and here I am talking into this microphone. So it's very personal here. This is where for me it all started, and I'm thankful for it, just because I know this is the person that I was created to be. And why did it start with radio? Because my interest in radio sort of became an interest in what is known as amateur radio and listening to shortwave radio. Now, this is before the internet. And so back then, I mean, if you're listening to this and you don't remember life from way back then, you don't really understand that the world used to be a big place. Now the world is very small, and there's lots of great advantages to that, but we've lost some of that magic because there is no far away anymore. And so for me at the time, radio and listening to radio stations from around the world, different languages, for me, my imagination just went wild, thinking, what is life like there? What would it be like? Are they in the mountains of Ecuador? What's that like? I hope I can see it one day. And so that is what then drove me to taking trips and traveling a little bit. And my opportunity to do so initially was through mission work and with some different organizations that had ties to humanitarian elements and humanitarian purposes. And it changed me.
How did it change you?
I couldn't go back after seeing that level of need that some of our brothers and sisters around the world are living in. I couldn't go back to my little life and forget them. But also, I couldn't forget, in so many cases, I couldn't forget the joy that they had, even though they were in need, by my standards at least. In many cases, there was a joy and a happiness that they had that benefited me and benefited those that were working with them. And they were helping them to improve their lives and in lots of different ways. But there's something about that human experience when you realize maybe happiness isn't in a thing.
I've heard that when you leave the country, the United States, and you come back to the United States, it's a different United States you come back to.
It is. I think anyone who grows up in maybe what we think of as like the Western world, the U.S. and so many other countries that fall into that same category, and life is really good. Now, of course, we complain and we feel sorry for ourselves and all those things that are kind of part of human nature. But we have it so good. And then if you go and travel, and if you travel to an area where you maybe see some of the greater needs, and you again, it's both. It is wanting to see them flourish in ways perhaps that they're not right now, wanting to see some good things happen for them, but also bonding with them, loving them, being loved by them, and also feeling and learning from them in that very same moment. So does it change if you get to go experience? Of course it changes you. And not the least of which is you come back, and if you've traveled to where they don't speak English, right? You come back and you realize English isn't the only language. It happens to be ours, and it is the most influential language in the modern world. But I find languages interesting, and so to be exposed to that and to see that is just, to me, all a part of the cultural richness that you experience when you travel.
When did media start to become involved in your traveling internationally? And when did you know that you wanted to create media around what you're experiencing?
I think it was just the natural progression of who I am, and also what the world is. The world has changed a lot in the last 10 years, right? And being someone who was drawn to radio and the content and the creation of audio content, and someone who was working in radio at the time, media, social media, videos, like let's go back and remember what life was like before the BlackBerry. And then when the BlackBerry showed up, that didn't revolutionize video. It revolutionized email, mostly texting and whatnot. But then you have the iPhone, and as media, it became easier to record videos and then easier to share them, right? There was a time, even we remember back to the early days of Facebook, where videos were, you didn't really post videos. But as the world changed and grew and the opportunity to share video became easier, my own imagination or my own thought process was how can I take this media, all that stuff grew with radio, and I learned all of that through the radio process. How can I take what I know, what I'm good at, what I understand, and then apply it to what I love? And that was really where the Edge of Adventure began, which was this idea that what if I create an experience that is all those things that I like so much, the traveling, the culture, the humanitarian work. If I were to create a video experience and then share it with people, what would that be like? And that's really where it started.
Do you remember seeing the first video that you put out there in the world, like all completely done?
Well, so the first, obviously we all nowadays are social media and the different things that social video. It's so easy to share. Setting those things aside, those things don't count. Still very proud of the Edge of Adventure, Nicaragua. So you have to think of Edge of Adventure as a series of films, and the ability to create a film. And by a film, it's a documentary type film, travel film that I host. And in that, I take the audience along with me. It's in a very personal way. I take them along with me to go to this location. It's always off the beaten path. It's hard to get to. And so you experience the country, the travel, what it's really like to get to maybe some of the corners of a third world country. And then when there, discover something beautiful, a work that's being done where people are making the world a better place by investing in others, giving of themselves, and making a big difference for others there on the ground in this little location, far away from anything I would have even thought about as just a guy back here in Woodstock. But the world is full of wonderful stories, and I think they need to be told. And so that's why I do what I do in the creation of these films and the podcast and this sort of thing. But it is because I'm driven by a purpose, and that purpose is to share these stories. Yes, it's true the humanitarian groups need new people to discover what they do. They need the backing, the financial support now more than ever. But also the audience needs to hear, we need to hear these stories because they are inspiring and they add something to our lives.
In the news industry, I know so much of what we see out there, by definition, news is something that is out of the ordinary, right? That's like 2% of what really happens in the whole world. And yet that's mostly what we ingest when we're looking at things. But it's frustrating to know that there's so many good things that are happening out there in the world that we'll never know about in a third world country off the beaten path if you weren't the kind of person to go and expose that and highlight it.
Well, I think it's an honor. To whatever degree I do that, it's an honor to be able to do it. And I'm just the guy trying to tell the story, to share the story, because the story is right there in front of you. The story is being told already. My job as the producer, the host of The Edge of Adventure, is to take you there, to take a person there so they can witness what's happening. And yes, you mentioned news, and I think you've worked in the news, TV news industry. Mm-hmm. And the news thrives on I hate to say it but I think it's true. The news industry really thrives on bad news, and they want to try to bring you back because they're trying to get you upset, so you'll stay tuned, so you'll turn back tomorrow. And in the whether you're wherever you might be on the political spectrum, there's a source of news you can tune to keep you upset and to keep you worried and to keep you mad at oftentimes at your brothers and sisters, the people right around the corner. And so there's a lot of that. I hope through what I have created and what I dream of creating, I hope to prove that there's also room for some good news, some news that says, hey, whether you're on the left or on the right, whether you're a Christian or not, there's room for us to work together to help somebody else. And in the process, we're going to see that it is great. You receive more than you give.
What do you think people don't know about the other cultures that you've been exposed to? I guess what I was thinking is, I know that I was talking to you a little bit about how I think we're more alike than we are different. There's nothing more that highlights that to go to a different country and see that they do things a little bit differently, but inherently we all want to be heard and seen and valued and loved. What do you think there's a disconnect here between other cultures and what we're used to here? What do you think people would need to know?
Oh, I think probably the first thing that comes to mind is that when you travel, whether you go across the border or around the world, you have to remember they aren't Americans, and they may not see the world exactly like you do or value the same things or in the same way. Now, to your point, I do think there's something about the human experience that does transcend all of those. We want to love and be loved, and obviously we need to eat, and we want to take care of our children and so forth. So there are many, many things that we would have in common, and that is wonderful. But I do think where an American or a Westerner can make the mistake, a mistake, is to assume that they're going to have the American perspective. And for those of us who are Americans, it is our experience. We haven't lived anything else. But it's good to go into other cultures and countries with a level of patience so that you don't try to superimpose something on them that's not what they need.
Have you found yourself in situations where you have felt like maybe not ostracized, but sort of highlighted the fact that you are American? And have you ever felt not welcomed somewhere?
So I'll answer the part about being recognized as an American. I can't go anywhere and blend in. Like if I travel I don't blend in here.
For those of you who can't see this gentleman, why would you say you don't blend in?
I mean, I think because I go out of my way. I'm sort of making a statement. I've got long hair. I've got a long beard. Not that that's that unusual, but I worked in corporate America, and I did that. And I wore the suits and the ties and had the clean-shaven face, and I did that, and that's okay. But for the new chapter in my life, when I kind of needed to reinvent myself and decide, okay, what am I going to do? I decided to challenge that a little bit. So mostly I say that as a joke, but if I'm traveling in a country, they're going to notice you. I mean, it's certainly if you're traveling in rural places that you stand, I'm going to stand up. So I'm used to that part. The good news, I think, to your second question, did I ever feel
unwelcome?
I don't. Virtually never do I feel unwelcome. Okay. Now it would be foolish to say that you've traveled and that there's never been a time where someone had a little axe to grind. Of course, but that is not normal. That is very unusual in my case. But I think, and so if I were advising, you have to look like you've been there before. Meaning, if you're walking around and you look confused and you just look like you're sort of giving off this energy that you don't know what you're doing there, then that's what's going to be noticed about you, is that maybe, and for that would be potentially could make you vulnerable to someone who might want to do you harm. But I always just act like I've been there before, and I act like I know what I'm doing. Like every other thing I've done in my life, I just act like I know what I'm doing.
You never have imposter syndrome? I do every day. I'm having it right now. Just interviewing you, I'm kind of like, this is amazing that I get to, like the code still works at the door that I can walk in this place.
Well, imposter syndrome, I would say humility is a good thing and gratitude is a good thing. So if you're feeling, thankful and humble, don't confuse that with imposter syndrome. Don't go thinking that you're an imposter. If you're a fake and you're trying to pretend to be something that you're not, then maybe you've got something to worry about. But you're a genuine person that enjoys doing this, and you're doing a great job. So what's there to be an imposter about? But I have so much to learn. I'm thankful, at this point in my life. I mean, you live a little bit and you learn a few things, and so I'm at that point in life where I know I've learned some lessons. One of those lessons is that you have a lot to learn. And so anybody who acts like they've got it all put together or they know all the answers, they are pretending.
Interesting take on that. So you know who you are. So when you show up somewhere and you're acting like you know where you're going, you're not being an imposter. You're actually just trying to find your way in a way that doesn't make you vulnerable. Sure.
I mean,
I love that.
I think I love to travel. I love to be in a new place. I love to not know where I'm going to spend the night tonight, where, what hotel room I'm going to be in or what city. I like that. And so if I show up, it's not as if I'm pretending that I've been there 100 times, but I am comfortable in not having been there. And I'm comfortable with figuring it out as you go. Anyone that has followed The Edge of Adventure or that's followed me throughout the years knows there are two words that two principles that I like to focus on. One is adventure and the other is purpose. And why did I choose those two? I don't know, but I couldn't get them out of my spirit many, many years ago when I first started this. And the adventure concept is the learning to be okay with the twists and turns in the road, whether that's, me in Latin America in the mountains somewhere, or just life where something new happens, something is taken from you, or there's a new opportunity. Those are the twists and turns in life. Life's a journey, and we need to take it as an adventure and not expect that we're going to know exactly how it's an adventure. I don't know how it's going to turn out. And that's part of the adventure. So one of the concepts that I try to bring out in the show and in the podcast and the different things that I do with the platform, and even as I share with business leaders and people who are their day-to-day adventure is running a business, my objective and what I feel partly called to encourage them with is that the fact that they are on an adventure, and they just need to remember that that's what it is and not be frustrated by the twists and turns. And then the second thing that I mentioned is purpose, adventure, and purpose. Purpose is why am I doing it? Why am I doing any of it? And if you're running a business, one of those whys is you're you're trying to make some money. That's what a business exists for. But what will you use your money for? What can the business do? What purpose can the business seek or follow after that brings value to the world around it? Is it just about the money? Is it just about the money? Or is whether a business or person, the purpose applies to us as individuals. What am I living for? What is all this about? Because it's a lot of work, this thing we call life. The getting up in the morning and the driving in the traffic and the dealing with the cubicle farm and the bills to pay and the other issues that we run into. I mean, that's a lot of work. What am I doing it for? Because there is real value in all those things that we have to do in life. I think where we start to feel empty is when we've lost track of what we're doing them for. And a part of what I hope to bring through the episodes of The Edge of Adventure or any of the other things that I work on, I want to give people an opportunity to see what they've been missing and then to take part in it.
I love several things. One of them is that you're talking about the grind that we all can get caught up in because we need to make money to support our life that we sometimes get just sort of fall into. And it does there is some message that is out there and I've believed this as well, that I don't have a choice. I got to go to work. I got to pay my bills. I got to do this, the have to, as opposed to get to, which I think you talk a lot about the reframing of life as not being sort of like just a Monday through Sunday kind of living. Let me just survive it, but actually look at it as reframing it as not just adventure, but there's joy, because there's so much that's not joyful about being a human. But if you are finding something that fills your heart with joy, then there is purpose there too.
Very much so. And sometimes, or a part of it, I guess, is losing track of what you're doing or perhaps failing to even fully value it. Meaning,
oh my goodness, that's a good point.
Meaning, if you're working 60 hours a week and you're taking care of your kids and your mom, and you make time to volunteer here and there, you take a look around. I mean, your adventure is already full of all kinds of purpose. And you need to remember that and give yourself some credit for that. But there are times in life where that routine, which just kind of pulls us in, and we're going to work and we're doing our thing, and maybe it's not even that hard. And then you go home and you're watching TV, or you're just looking, you're scrolling, or you're not. You have the ability to grow your influence and to do something for somebody else. And if that's the scenario you find yourself in, then you're going to feel a lot better when you do.
The time is going to pass whether or not you have this quality with it or not. Where does fear play in your life?
I'm afraid I don't know.
No. All right. Cheers to you.
So fear, of course, fear is I would be foolish to say that I don't struggle with fear. Fear is it's a human condition thing. There's something that we're all afraid of. But I have learned that when you fear something, the only answer is to face it, right? And if you are held back, you fear, I'm afraid, I don't know, you make excuses, whatever it might be, you're being held back by that fear. But the minute you just say, I'm going to face it, and it could be something that requires some thought. There are some things that are legitimately dangerous out there, and I'm not talking about those. But we tend to avoid being made uncomfortable. And a lot of the fear that probably you're even thinking of is a fear of being uncomfortable. I'm not going to know everything. I'm not going to be the one that knows everything. If I start doing that, I'm going to be kind of a beginner. Or what if I fail? Like, that's a huge one for people. What if I get started and I don't do that great? And these are the things that hold us back. If we let fear of failure become too powerful. But I do know and have learned in some personal ways that facing your fear is the answer, and you've got to face it. And it doesn't mean that you'll go perfectly, but it does mean that you get on the other side of it. And usually the thing that we're fearing, notice the words, I have to say all the time, but usually the things that we're fearing aren't that bad. They're not really that bad. And there's a bravery that we need to tap into. And that's a theme that I like to pull from as I think about metaphorically, as I sort of teach, I guess, through The Edge of Adventure. And it's a show, and you can go watch it. You can find it on Prime. You can find it on Apple TV. And if you would rather put up with the commercials, you can watch it on Tubi, Tubi, Prime, and Apple. And would love for you to do that, and then let me know what you think. But as you think about adventure as a metaphorically or a little less literally, a part of what we have to do is push ourselves outside of our comfort zones. And I have always believed, and a part of what I try to share is that your real adventure begins. Your adventure begins when you push yourself outside of your comfort zone. And when I explain this, then I bring it all back around. And I say, right then at that moment when you're crossing that line and you're going from my comfort zone to, I don't know how it's going to work out there, but I've got to go do it. I've got to do it. I was afraid, but I know I need to, and it's going to make a difference. And I've got to, right there where you're crossing that line from comfort to, I don't know how it's going to be out there. That is the edge of adventure. That's when it's just beginning.
Do you think there's something about your personality sort of inherent to who you are that makes you understand that concept and live by it? Or is it something you learned?
Well, it's probably both. I mean, I think we learn things. We learn things, but we are all made who we are, and I believe for a reason. So am I that way? Was that how I was created? And then I've learned something, I'm sure, but that doesn't make me unique. We're all that way. And that's what I want my listeners to think about, is that you have special gifts that I don't have. You have learned lessons that I haven't learned. You've got opportunities that I don't have. Put them to use. Put them to use. Be brave enough to put them to use for a purpose, and do something for somebody else. Do something for somebody else in some way, whether that takes you, halfway around the world or just down the street. And it's more of an outlook, I think. But to answer your question, I think it is who I have been created to be, and it is the result of lessons I've learned. But that's my story. And everybody listening, you've got your own story. And my story is not better than anybody else's. You need to be about going on that adventure that's out there. It's waiting for you.
Is there anything that you wish you knew before you got started on all of this? Is there something that you wish you could go back and tell yourself?
Well, let me flip that around. I'll tell you what I'm glad I didn't know is how much work is involved. And so now, spoiler alert, I guess I've ruined it for everybody else. There's a lot of work. There's a lot of work involved in pursuing your passion, in building a company, in building a brand. There's just a lot of work. And so I say it teasingly, I'm glad I didn't know that, because I think now, and I'm looking ahead at all that I need. I need this, and then I got that, and I'm driving forward. But sometimes I have to take a break and go look back and be like, my gosh, look at the roads over which I've traveled. I mean, look at what I have accomplished. And I think for all of us, it's a good reminder. Yes, focus forward and remember and work hard at the things ahead. But you've done so much in your life to get you where you are. And some of it you've earned, and some of it you're just blessed to be in the right place at the right time. But it's a lot of work, and so I think sometimes, like, my goodness, if I had to go back to the beginning, could I do it again? And that's a tough question.
Oh,
but
really?
what I do think, meaning it's in moments like that you realize how much you've done.
It's daunting, right?
It is. It's and that goes for all of us as we look back over our lives. But yeah, I think your point about fear is a big one. I think if we could go back, tell our younger selves, be brave. Just be brave, because that stuff you're fearing is not that big of a deal. You've got this, and don't let it hold you back. And those are the things where we lose time, is where we sat fearing something. So
it's paralyzing.
Yeah.
It can be.
It can be. It sure can.
When you were creating Edge of Adventure and you knew that you were doing something that you were so passionate about, did you have any idea that it would take off like it did? And how did that happen?
Well, I dream big. And I'm happy to and proud of what we've done with it. But I'm more focused on what's still left to be done. What do I want to do next? Where does this need to go next? Again, I just made the point. Sometimes I need to stop and remember and look back and just be grateful for all the roads that have been traveled. But I tend to be more focused on the next big dream. And full disclosure about me, I don't tend to pat myself on the back and be like, oh, you did great. Yeah, well, wow, look at that. And I feel like I have a mission, and I feel like I have a calling, and I just want to move it forward. And anything that happens along the way that looks good or sounds good, it's a part of the process. I'm thankful for it, but I'm still dreaming forward.
What do you see for yourself next then?
So for the Edge of Adventure, I want to make more of these films, and each film is a big project. And anyone listening in the Atlanta area, I know the podcast goes far beyond Atlanta, but the entertainment industry right now is facing some challenges, and we won't get into all of that. But it's business. It's a part of Atlanta, and it's something that we're proud of. But there are some challenges that industry is facing, and some of those affect me. Okay. Also, when you are in the entertainment industry and you want to make something good, meaning something that's wholesome, some of the decision makers aren't interested in it because they're after a certain type entertainment that they know, quote unquote, works. It's going to make them the money they needed to make. And it tends to be a lot of the same old. And understand, they're looking at it as a business. And for me, it's a business, but it's also purpose driven. And so what do I want? I want to take the Edge of Adventure to the next level, whatever that looks like. And in order to do that, I need the right kind of people to partner with me in that project. But yes, I want to see it. I want more films made, and I want to reach more people with this message. So that's what I see for the Edge of Adventure. It's sort of another project which is similar, and you mentioned it when we opened the show, which is Rugged Compass. Rugged Compass is a multimedia platform that serves humanitarian organizations. And it serves them primarily, the primary purpose for Rugged Compass is to connect the humanitarian organizations with an audience of people who are drawn to the type work that they do. And it's beneficial. Obviously, the humanitarian organizations are nonprofit and survive on donations, and so they benefit from that, from the audience, from the people who are supportive of that, both with their financial gifts and their time and their own efforts to share the vision that the different organizations have. But it's also important for the people and the audience and those of us out here just living our lives. It's important for us to be able to share in what is happening in the corners of the globe. It enriches our lives to know that we're not just, the world is not just the arguments that we'll see on the news tonight. There are people who are very talented, who have given up careers that they could have had to make a lot of money, or they gave those up so that they could live in a small village somewhere and love the people there genuinely. And then over years, 10, 20, 30 years, watch that location come to life in its own way with its own special touch of culture. We need that. So The Edge of Adventure, I want to see it as both as a podcast and as the film platform. I want to do more with that, reach more people. And then on the Rugged Compass side, that's a platform that in a variety of different ways serves the organizations. And as far as the listening audience or anybody for any reason who might be interested in getting involved, please do look that up. And you can find a Rugged Compass, including the mobile app. There's a mobile app and there's a streaming TV app. So please check those out. You can find information about that at ruggedcompass.com, ruggedcompass.com. And I'm not trying to wrap the show here.
Good. I was hoping not.
I've just been working in radio, and it seemed like a good time to plug everything. And then you can also find out about The Edge of Adventure, where else other than at theedgeofadventure.com.
Can I ask you some superlative questions? All right. So have you had any meals that are just your absolute favorite as you've traveled internationally? Or the worst meals?
So, I'm always very careful to answer those questions because
it's a controversial question.
Well, it's just that just because I don't like it doesn't mean it wasn't good. I have had some meals that they're amazing, they're delicious, and it might be at a nice restaurant or it might be at a more common person type location, and many meals that I was very impressed with. And then also quite a few that I ate and didn't want to eat. And out of a sense of being polite and gracious towards a wonderful host, I ate it anyway. And I remember... Okay, so here I'm going to answer it this way. And again, why I'm being a little evasive with that because I don't want anybody to hear and be like, oh, he didn't like my food. He didn't like my food. He told the story about my food. And so here's the thing: if you're worried about it, I loved your food. I'm talking about somebody else,
of course.
But I did learn. You've reminded me of an important lesson. If you are sitting down to a meal, and you already know, like, I'm going to eat this meal here, but I can already tell I'm going to have to kind of mind over matter this a little bit. The best advice I can give you is eat slowly. Don't lie to yourself and say you're going to eat this meal, be done, and they're going to be satisfied. If you eat quickly and you get it done, you get it out of the way, and now I'm good, guys, I ate the meal. They can then say, oh, he loved the food. He needs more. And then you're going, round 2, round 3. So I think just a pro tip would be smile and eat the meal slowly, and that way you're less likely to have to delve into seconds or thirds. How about that?
That's very good advice.
Okay.
As a universal advice, just to take.
Right. And that you could use it. You could use it stateside too.
Yeah.
But just yes.
Was there a city, a town, a moment that it just sort of sustains you when you have difficult times? Things that you can, something you can reflect on where you say, this is why I do this.
Well, I think there's two types of moments. There's and why do I do what I do? That is a moment when I'm in a village and I'm in a little, hut of some kind, and I've got the family and they're cooking for me, and they've opened their home, as humble as it may be. They've opened it to me, and I'm there and I'm with them and I'm in the moment, and really nothing else matters. I'm just sharing in that moment with them, and the love expressed and the smile on their face and the way that they love and welcome me, that's a moment when I think, okay, yeah, this is really all that matters, right? I mean, this kind of, you just boil it all down. You're not worried about the cameras or the microphones or the platforms. You're just there with some people, and they're just genuine. That's pretty awesome. So that's the meaningful one. But also as a guy who did not grow up on the beach, I've seen and I've gotten to walk on some wonderful beaches that are still kind of untouched, and where you're basically between the ocean and the jungle. And those moments, those aren't the moments I'm doing all this for, but they're the moments that you're allowed to reflect a little bit and be reminded how beautiful things are, and also how large the world is, how big the world is. I mean, when you look out over the ocean, how can you think, I'm just a speck compared to the ocean, let alone the universe, for crying out loud. But just when you think, I look out over the ocean and it looks beautiful, but there's an entire world under that ocean and in that water, and it just goes forever, and it's deep, and I'm just this guy walking on the beach here. And so you're kind of hit in those moments with a beauty, but also an awareness of just how small we are in the grand scheme of things. And perhaps that's important to remember, because we are small in the grand scheme of things. And yet we can do some amazingly big things if we set our mind to it.
I like when I look at the stars sometimes and I see that, they've been there, they're constant, right, for generations and generations. And that there are people that had these major, major problems looking up at the stars, and then, they're no longer here. So it makes me think that my problems aren't that big because I'm so small. Right.
We're just people, and there have been a lot of people that have gone before us, a lot of people that will go after us. We're here. It's a blink of an eye, and everybody listening, you're listening right now. You're still here. And there are people you have known and loved who are not here anymore. And maybe one of those big questions we have to ask ourselves, if I'm still here, how can I make the most of it? Because the day is going to come where I won't be. I mean, my number is going to be up, maybe sooner, maybe later, but my number is going to be up. And between now and then, I want to do something that matters. And for me, what matters is when I'm not being selfish. If I'm being selfish, then I'm doing the wrong thing. But if my heart and mind is open to giving and doing something for somebody else, like all these wonderful humanitarian organizations and leaders and people who do that day in and day out, their lives really matter. They're doing wonderful things, and I guess in my own way, I want to help be a part of it in the way, small way, whatever, just the way that it has been chosen for me.
I think of it as what you do in the dash. And what I mean by that is like, you look at a headstone and there's a birth date and end date, but the dash is where your activity is and your choices are. It's like what you do with the dash. So like always the way I think of it, what did someone's life look like in that dash? The beginning and the end is marked, but do you feel like because you have done so many really impressive and impactful, not just media-wise, but like the way that you live your life, the impact that you've had on people, that if something were to happen today, that you could put your head down or whatever and know that you did the most you could with your time to help the world?
Well, first of all, thank you. You're very kind with your words, and I appreciate them. I also don't feel like I've done that much, and I'm being honest. I don't feel like I've done that much. I want to do more, and I think even then, I'll know it's not that much. Like but what gives it value is not that it's that much, or that it's a lot, or that people love you for it. That, to me, what matters is what was put before me today to do, and how can am I going to be able to put my head down on the pillow tonight and am I going to, the difference between feeling satisfied of like, okay, it was a good day and I did I can sleep tonight peacefully, versus laying there and feeling kind of angsty. Did I do what was put before me to do? And this, these are big questions that you're asking, and
I know my brain.
It's okay. I mean, I like them. I like these questions, but it is a big question, because I can get up every day and do what I had to do to get through the day. And everybody else told me I had to this, and be here by then, I had to do that, and I got that project, and I got this and that, and I got to pick up the kids, and we got, soccer practice, all those things. And again, there's value in all that. I never would I've done most of that. And it's valuable, but also being able to live disciplined enough to open your ears, say a prayer, ask God to show you. No, in the midst of all that, in the midst of all my busyness, what am I supposed to do? And the busyness is going to happen anyway. It's more about having ears to hear, oh, I could do this in this moment. And that is what needs to be done in order to have a good night's rest.
I like that you're talking about it being so personal, because it's almost like the way I look at my life is it's between me and God, what I do and how I look at it. And I love doing my radio show, and I love it when I can help people, and I like feeling like I've made the world seem less like everyone's an enemy, but more that there are people that are kind to each other. I like that. But it is just between me and God. And I guess that's the way you're talking about it, is like at the end of the day, you are doing something that does affect lots and lots of people, I guess, right? But you are talking about whether or not you can face God at the end of the day and know that you chose to do something with the right meaning behind it, with the right intention behind it. And that outside of that is actually not the most, because you can't control, I suppose, what happens, where it lands, what it does. That's how I look at the radio show. I'm like, wherever it's supposed to go, it's going to go. But knowing that I was presented with an opportunity, did I take it to do something that makes me feel like I'm helping the world? Because I think that's what we're supposed to do while we're here, is to help each other. It's hard to be human, but to be able to help people, whatever medium you choose to do, it can be very small, but it is just pretty personal. And I guess I didn't think about it like that.
I think you're right. I think it is very personal, and we all have different gifts, talents. We're at different stages in our lives. We have different resources. We shouldn't get caught up in comparing like what I'm doing with somebody else, or I'm doing more, or some people are called to do something that is in the public eye. That doesn't make it more important than the person serving that other person, quietly in that hut in the village. Just because this other guy is on TV doesn't make it more important. Quite the contrary. The question is, am I doing what I should be doing, and am I making the most of the opportunities? And yes, I mean, as a guy, man of faith, I mean, I agree with what you're saying. You know, you have to. I would ask God and say, show me what I can do in this moment. And the moment may be busy otherwise, but you're going to get some peace out of it in knowing that I saw past the busyness, right? And far too often we're just focused on the busyness. And me too. We're just focused on the busyness. And then we lose sight of the opportunity to be a blessing of some kind to someone else. And these are lessons, right? These are the lessons that I see and have learned through the organizations and people in particular who I would watch through the years and see them as amazing servants and admired them for it.
I like that you're talking about moments, because here we are talking about big, grand things. You know, your company and the world, but I can have the same kind of impact in my own little way by letting someone in traffic, or something just small, or being kind when I don't even want to be, you know?
I mean, your traffic analogies, it's a bit much to ask.
Believe me, I agree.
That's a lot. I mean,
that means counts way more.
It's everybody for themselves out there. Why is that? You know, that's the question we always have: is why is everybody out here on the road?
And then I'm there too.
But I'm there too.
Everyone needs to get out of my way. No, but I think it's important to remember that it doesn't have to be these big grand gestures. It doesn't have to be a big production company. It can be being kind and in a moment. It doesn't have to be a year-long goal. And that's important for me to remember too, because I can get very future focused and I have to do this. I've got to run because I've got this goal, as opposed to slowing down. But I have one final question for you. I actually have so many, but let me choose. All right. Is there one thing that you want to accomplish that you haven't yet? One thing that you just say, I've got on my bucket list, I really need to know that I've done this.
That's a hard question for me. When I think, you didn't give me the questions in advance. So as I react to it in the moment,
that requires too much effort.
And you say, no, it's much better if you don't.
Okay.
This is I've enjoyed the conversation.
Oh, thank you. Me too.
And there's nothing that comes to mind that I say, I have to do this or I won't feel successful. I have to do this. Is just this one thing, and I think that would be. I don't want to feel that way, because first of all, then what happens when you do that? Are you ready? Are you done?
Where's your next goal or whatever?
But I mean, goals are good, and I've got goals, but I don't have something in particular that I'm saying I've got to do this in order, or I won't feel successful, or I won't feel like I've completed my mission. I've got a lot of, I've already said, I've got ideas and things I want to do for the Edge of Adventure, and ways I want to grow Rugged Compass and do more. That's where a lot of my time right now is going, is I'm building those things and networking and investing and doing so those things are important, and I want to see them flourish. But I'm not owed anything. God doesn't owe me anything, and I want time with my family, and I look forward to the future when I would have grandkids, and I want those things and think those things are good, but also God doesn't owe me those things, and so I don't think to myself, I've got to have those things in order for me to be happy, or in order for life for me to feel fulfilled. The truth is, and I did learn this at a very relatively early age, when my best friend, when we were 21, my best friend passed away.
Sorry.
And thank you, of course, and still miss him, which is interesting. All these years later, you still miss a person, but when you lose someone, certainly you're not a child, but you're still a very young adult. And in addition to just grieving him at that time, it left like a mark on me, which was, I'm not guaranteed tomorrow. And so this is all a long answer, but you're making me think about, so I'm kind of processing it in real time. But the answer is, I want to live life. And if I'm living life, then whenever God calls me home, I'll be cool with it. I'm going to regret that moment if I haven't been living life. And some of the things we've been talking about today is how I define living life, taking it as an adventure, not living in fear, going out of your comfort zone, doing something for other people. If I'm doing any combination of those things, I'm going to feel like I'm living life. And if I'm living life at that moment when God takes me home, that's the success.
I love that. I love that because it's almost like you haven't compromised anything. If you're doing something that you love and then God decides to take you then, well, where's the downside?
Right.
You wouldn't want to not do what you love and for fear of death.
Right, because that's going to get you somewhere somehow anyway. And that is not to say you should be foolish or do dangerous things that are going to get you hurt. But to live in fear of death, that would be, I think that would be a mistake. But also to live in fear of regret is also a problem, because I don't need to do anything. I don't need to do anything else in order for me to feel like, okay, God, He can take me when He's ready. And my job in the meantime is to live and to do the things that I can do today, whatever that might be.
Well, I'd like to end with this quote that you have on your Edge of Adventure website.
I hope it's good.
I think it's a good one. Good Lord. We are destined for more than the routine. We are called to explore and discover and to make a positive difference in the lives of others. We find ourselves on the edge of adventure with a decision to make, and we choose to live beyond status quo. I love that. So you live beyond status quo.
I try. I did write that before ChatGPT. So
that's your real words?
I can get credit for that one.
I could tell. No, I actually probably wouldn't be able to tell. How funny. I didn't even think of the ChatGPT thing, but boy, that would have been a nice one to make.
I mean, yeah, we can do a lot with it, but fortunately there's still something to the human touch.
Yeah, I think there always will be. That's as well as in the voiceover world, it's still nothing like a real human with real inflections and breathing and catches in your voice and all of that. There's something nice about the fact that can't quite be replicated
I agree.
Yet, I say. Who knows?
Well, thanks for having me. You're very kind, and you are doing a great work.
Well, thank you.
And the opportunity just to share. And, the great thing about being the host is you have this influence over where the conversation goes. And you kind of have to roll with it. You don't know necessarily where it's going to go. But I just appreciate the chance that you've given me today to share a very unique type interview conversation.
Well, thank you. It is my honor, and I'm so grateful that you were letting me be the one to ask questions as opposed to you being the one that usually asks questions. You're a brave soul.
It's definitely, being the guest gives you an appreciation for the guests. Because as the person asking the questions, you're kind of in control. And there's a sense of comfort in being in control. You're in your comfort zone. But I've had fun. So it's been wonderful. Thank you.
My pleasure. Adam Asher, I appreciate you coming to the studio and sharing all of the good things that you are doing, but not just that. Even just this conversation gives me a lot to think about. And I need a reframing sometimes. I get very caught up in, I'm my own worst enemy. It's just me and my brain sometimes, and that's not great. So I appreciate that you've given me a way to think about even just my everyday moments, that I can get very dogged in my determination to finish what I need to finish and not really consider what it's the effects of that, even for the people around me. And as much as I would like to do big things in the world, I love being reminded that the small things can be just as impactful, if not more impactful. It's between you and one other person. And even just kind words to people can be so sustaining. And I love seeing the big things, but I love also knowing that the smaller things matter too, because I feel like that's more attainable for me right at the moment. And that was important for me to remember. All of it matters. So thank you for being such a caring human for all the people on the planet that get to interact with you and hopefully get inspired by the great works that you're doing. So thank you so much.
Thank you again.
And thank you all for listening to Fearless Formula on Business Radio X. And again, this is Sharon reminding you that with knowledge and understanding, we can all have our own fearless formula. Have a great day.